Funding for Elwood City Limits is brought to you by Facebook,
Facebook.com/Elwood City Limits,
Twitter,
@ECL Podcast,
Tumblr,
ElwoodCityLimits.tumblr.com,
email,
ElwoodCityLimits@gmail.com,
and by contributions from listeners like you.
literally at ElwoodCityLimits.libsyn.com.
Thank you.
Cha-ching, cha-ching, baby.
All right, if you got something, go ahead.
Oh, I most certainly do not have something. I mean, is it February 1st? Is January gone? It is.
Yeah.
Bye-bye, January. 2018 is here. It's not a leap year, so we got 29 days of February to go. 18 days till my birthday, Will. Hope you're planning something special for me.
Oh my goodness, Lucas Mancini Day. That's right.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
Lucas Mancini Day is on the horizon. The countdown begins. Lucas Mancini Day -18. Or -17, I guess, today.
Have you got, do you have any big plans in mind for yourself?
No, I gotta get on that, to be honest with you. I feel like January just, went by in a flash. So I have to catch up. Make sure I have all the festivities planned. Maybe rent a banquet hall. Maybe get some catering done, perhaps. Ties into the episodes we're watching today on the Episodic Arthur podcast.
Well, just
Elwood
don't
City
ask for too many cakes, and I feel like whoever's catering your Lucas Mancini Day celebrations will be very, very grateful.
I hope so. I'll be paying them, unlike getting your poor father to supply you with all the manual labor.
Yeah, make sure to ask first. Welcome, everybody. This is Elwood City Limits. It's the Episodic Arthur podcast. This is the first time that I've ever recorded it right after that I get out of bed. So, welcome, everybody. Glad that I did these notes relatively recently. This is Will Young, your host, and my co-host here, Lucas Mancini.
You're a good sport, Will. Coming in all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, wiping the fresh morning dew out of your eyes to talk about everybody's favorite 90s PBS children's show.
Hey, I'm just glad we're doing it a bit early. It's you and I, we're busy guys. We live in that go-getter lifestyle. So sometimes I function a little bit better when I have something to do to get my brain all stimulated right away in the morning. So I'm happy to do it, happy to be here. And this is, I want to say these episodes, at least one of them, is very, very relatable to kind of things today, would you say?
I absolutely would agree. It's almost uncanny, Arthur, I always think it's supposed to have these sort of general morals, but it's weird how often it's lampooning something very specific, not just oh, this is a childhood lesson, but hey, remember in the 90s? Do you remember Beyblades? Do you remember Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon? Do you remember Battle Beat-A-Bon? Marbles? What were those things called? Mighty Beans? Angry Beans?
Oh, Crazy Bones.
Crazy Bone.
I believe there were Mighty Beans, though. That sounds familiar.
And it's funny how so many of those lessons still run true today. The fidget spinners, goo,
right?
Whatever.
It's just something that will always be true, I think, and so it's funny to see.
Till the end of time, we're gonna be at 2147. And the next big thing is going to be oh, look at this.
I wish there was a way that we could take all of the fads that ever will be and just kind of line them up next to each other, so we could be whoa, what's that going to be? What's that?
In the post-apocalypse, the only currency will be Beanie Babies.
It's got to be, right? Because So we're talking here about another Arthur episode here in season 3. This is Arthur Rides the Bandwagon. Essentially, the whole episode is about this craze called Woogles, which are these like little doll things. They're very malleable. You can like stretch them, and they also have like a voice box in them. So I don't know how that works, but that was one of the big questions that I had here in my notes of like, so what is this making? What is this kind of emulating, I guess? It is the general notion of like a kid's fad, but like at the time in 1999, we would have had a lot of different things that would have been sweeping the nation. There was Beanie Babies, there was Furbies, there was Tamagotchi,
Ooh.
and then there was even Pokemon was getting started. So like, what do you think this kind of looks the most like?
Well, there's a moment later on in the episode that I was certain what it was emulating, and it was Beanie Babies when Muffy pulls out her price guide for Woogle collectors, and she offers to sell Arthur a Woogle for the steep price of $37. That's what I was like, okay, this is... Because I remember, like, if you've ever watched... There's a Best of the Worst episode where they watch a VHS tape about pricing Beanie Babies.
Yes.
And so I remember, like, pre-widespread internet, you weren't able to just look on what the going rate was on eBay. You had to, like, there was this whole black Beanie Baby market. And it's just so crazy, like, how... tale as old as time, how consistent there is something like this out there. Like, I remember this Christmas, I was taking a look at what the kids are into, and there was like those little guys that hang on your finger. I forget what they're called, but like those were big. Like I said before, fidget spinners. Like, there's always going to be something. Do you remember Web Kids? That was kind of after my time. My sister got really into Web Kids. There's always going to be something where you got to collect them all, and they sell out very quickly with, like, forced scarcity. And it's just funny how, like clockwork, it always happens.
Yeah, you're right about that. I mean, I was part of, I guess, not part of the Beanie Baby craze. It's just like I was alive during it, and I did have Beanie Babies, but I didn't buy into. I was a bit too young to buy into the collector's part of it. But yeah, you're right. There is always something, and it always seems to change form in a really kind of unquantifiable way. Anyway, let's talk about the episode in specifics here. So the whole episode starts with Arthur and Buster outside of a toy store watching a TV ad for Woogles, and like this is eerie in how close to an actual commercial it is. Like it's hard to explain if you haven't seen it, but it's like, you know, what does it do? It's like the Woogle is kind of alive in a way. It's like it shimmies and shakes, and it like stretches, and the Woogle's talking, and all the kids like have a bunch of them. It's almost to the point where, like, if Woogles were indeed real, I think they would be a successful fad. Like, I think if you brought Woogles into this reality, the combination of the goo fad and, like, talking toys and then the collectability, each Woogle has its own personality, I think some executive needs to take a look at this Arthur episode and make them a reality, because I think it'd be a smash hit. They did a really great job of recreating this whole kind of ad and this toy. Like, it's a really great generic example of something the kids would be interested in, even right down to the theme song in the commercial. And so they both see this, and Arthur just kind of immediately laughs. I was like, ha, Woogles. Who could ever like something so stupid? And then it cuts to Buster, and he's immediately bought one. So that's how it started. It's kind of like Buster. I mean, he's not the first one to get a Woogle, but in Arthur's case, he is like patient zero for Woogles. And so the whole thing, and Woogles, so they are kind of, they kind of remind me of Crazy Bones in a little way. See our last episode.
So, Will, refresh my memory. What are Crazy Bones again?
All right, so I talked about Crazy Bones in the last episode,
Yeah.
but they're these like little plastic things that kind of serve as like, they're almost like a jacks or marbles with an attitude. Like, they all have kind of like Woogles. They all have their own face and their own kind of like personality. They're just much smaller, and they're meant to be like used in games. Woogles are kind of more like a Furby in that each of them has their own name and kind of their own little personality. They seem to. I said they seem to have the exact appeal of pop vinyls, but they seem to have a little bit more of use than they could do more than pop vinyls.
I need to get my supernatural Woogle. My Doctor Who Woogle.
Your Overwatch Woogle.
Yeah, my Overwatch Woogle. Ugh, oofa doofa.
Hey, I mean, listen. I say that they're more useful than pop vinyls. I have a couple pop vinyls myself, so I can't exactly throw shade here.
I mean, I'm gonna come clean. I also have a couple pop vinyls. I don't think I purchased either of them, but I do have them in my home.
Which ones do you have?
Oh my goodness gracious, this is so embarrassing. I feel like I feel like I'm owning up to some grand embarrassing thing. Listen, I don't want listeners out there. I don't want to be known as the guy with the pop vinyls, okay? Like, I have them, but I'm not like one of these dudes who are like waiting outside the EB Games to get my exclusive. Oh God, like I don't know, like
okay, calm down.
I'm just saying, I don't want to be the pop vinyl guy. I have an Andre the Giant one, and I have Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones. I know, it's super lame. I'm trying to get way into Nendoroids though. That's my new thing. Is they're a lot more expensive and better quality than pop vinyls. Have you heard of Nendoroids, Will? They're like a Japanese product. And so they're like chibi versions of. It's very similar to pop vinyl, except that they're posable and you can swap out the faces, and they're very well made to the point where they're like $50 each, whereas pop vinyls are like 15. But there's as someone who has been known to watch a Japanimation or two. There's a couple I've got my eye on for the Nendoroids.
No, this is the first time I'm seeing them. As I look them up here on Google. And of course, I mean, I'll put my money where my mouth is. I have a CM Punk and a Daniel Bryan pop vinyl. And somebody, I believe for one of the office Christmas parties that we were a part of, the Secret Santa, somebody got me a Deadpool bobblehead. So we've got between the two of us, we've got a couple of the most pop vinyls. Game of Thrones and Deadpool and wrestling.
I know. We're gonna next. You're gonna see me at the grocery store with a Harley Quinn T-shirt. I kid. I don't want to yuck anybody's yum. It's good to like what you like. Though I'm tempted to think about that. Did you see that post on Reddit where the guy's girlfriend made him sign a contract that he had to abide to a pop vinyl budget? And he'd had a certain amount of money that he was allotted each month for pop vinyl, and it had all these sub cases where it's this does not include timed exclusives or your Comic-Con attendances where there's exclusive pop vinyls. You are allowed to go over your budget for. It was insane.
I've not seen that, and that is a little too far.
I imagine a person in a room on an episode of Hoarders, and all that's in. They have no furniture. All they have is pop vinyls, and everybody in their life has abandoned them. And they go, "At least my pop vinyls will keep me warm."
Oh, that's a little too sad for me. So, as it turns out, as they leave the toy store, Muffy has her own pop vinyl, and Muffy has her own Woogle. Excuse me, it's same difference. And Arthur's completely confused. As the episode goes on a little bit, he finds out that every one of his friends has a Woogle and enjoys them in their own way. He accidentally sits on Francine's at school. Mr. Ratburn has one that, looks like a rat. It's got a long nose. And they're all different. They're all different primary colors too, so they're appealing in that way. There's a scene here where Francine she has three of them at this point. Two of them are doubles. So she offers to give one of them to Arthur, and he vehemently refuses at this point. And Francine has a great line. She kind of gasps and is like, "If you don't want to have fun, okay, it's a free country, but don't take it out on my Woogle."
It's weird because Arthur's also being kind of unreasonable at this point. You can tell he's left out, so he's kind of lashing out. Mm-hmm. But his dismissal, I guess it's kind of similar to me with the pop vinyls. His dismissal of the Woogles comes off as like a little bit mean-spirited, a little bit hipsterish. Like, he's not just saying like, oh, it's not for me. He's saying, who would enjoy a Woogle, those stupid things? Like, he's really, like I said before, he's really trying to yuck their yum. He sort of like sees himself as better than this whole Woogle thing, rather than just saying, oh, I don't really enjoy them. Do you know what I mean? And I think I'm having a little bit of a moment of clarity here, Will.
I'm not sure I totally agree with you, because from the way I see it, it's like, don't get me wrong, I do think that Arthur's a little bit too hasty to like advertise how much he doesn't like Woogles, but I think it's also that like he just doesn't get what's supposed to be fun about them, and it's the whole episode, or at least this part of it, is meant to be like Arthur is the only person who Woogles don't work for, and then he finds that it's absolutely everywhere. But you're right in that with these types of things, they only bother you as much as you let them. So Arthur's kind of really letting this get into his head, which actually makes total sense for him, because all of his friends are kind of doing this thing, and he's not. And he's like, well, there must be something wrong with me, or like, what's wrong with me that I can't enjoy them? I will note here, I also took down that Brain has a Woogle named Tiny Einie, and he has a little saying that's like, fun equals you times me squared, which is a dubious mathematical equation. I'm not sure that that's going to hold up in any sort of university situation, but
Tiny Einie's grand reveal happens when Arthur's sort of scouring the playground for someone who hasn't been affected by the Woogle fad like himself, and he sees Brain reading a book, and he wrongly assumes that Brain hasn't been a part of it. Then Brain like pulls a Webster's Dictionary defines a fad as, and sort of gives us the exposition of why the Woogles are so popular, and then busts out Tiny Einie, putting him really close to the camera.
We get this fantastic dream sequence after this.
Oh my gosh. This is really the star of the episode.
I think you're right. So Arthur is like tossing and turning in his bed, and like the classic like, no, Woogles kind of thing. And he dreams he's at a class picture day, and everything's normal, and then the photographer's like, hey, wait a minute, where's your Woogle? And then it kind of zooms out, and everybody has like their family of Woogles with them.
Have we seen this bad facial hair photographer before?
I believe he was Aunt Lucy's wedding photographer.
Oh, was he the like school day photographer from like episode 2 as well?
I think he was.
I don't know. For some reason, he really stood out to me this time. Like, maybe his incredulity at the fact that Arthur does not have a Woogle combined with his bad facial hair. I was like, you know what? I like this photographer fellow.
And so the thing that confused me here was that in Arthur's dream, and granted, it is a dream, but everybody has like doubles and triples of the same Woogle. Although you can see that on the can that you get their Woogle in, it shows you which one you're gonna get. So like, why bother? Like, I don't get that. Why hoard doubles and dubs and trips?
You got to have the ones with those imperfections. Those are the ones that are going to go for the most on eBay.
I see. So Arthur admits
it's like that Samus
Amiibo?
What are they called? Yeah, it's like that Samus Amiibo with the 2 guns.
See,
that'll go for a pretty penny.
See, Amiibo's another good one, because like my friend who is my age has admitted he has like a sickness when it comes to Amiibo. Like, he just kind of collects them, and I've gotten them for a couple of birthday and Christmas presents. So I have a couple of Amiibo that I cannot use and have never used. But
yeah, I have Amiibo
they look cool.
I have Amiibo sitting in my box in my closet, and they're all really common ones. There was a brief spill when Amiibos first came out that I was a part of that sickness. I was in the Halifax, Nova Scotia Amiibo collectors group on Facebook, and then I realized that I just don't have it in me to compete with these people. Like, people were nuts. They were crazy to the lengths they would go to, driving out like hours outside of town just to get that sweet, sweet Wii Fit trainer. And I was like, you know what? I just do not have the patience for this. I got Pikachu, and then I was out. Got my boy, and I was out of there.
Well, wasn't there even like a news item where like people robbed a truck or something of Amiibo?
What? if there was, I have to go look that up right after we finish this. That's hilarious.
Yeah, make sure you do. I feel like that might have happened. And so Arthur admits in the dream that he doesn't have a Woogle, and the photographer thinks for a second, and then he fixes it by giving him a stalk of broccoli. And he's like, "Are you sure this is going to work?" I'm like, "Trust me, kid. No one's going to know the difference." Then it cuts, and this is the best. It cuts to Arthur in the future with 2 kids. He's like grown up now, and he's got like the brain sweater on for some reason. And it cuts to him with 2 kids. One is like Arthur is a baby with glasses, and the other one kind of looks like DW, except she's got like a ponytail and is like 8 years old or something to that effect.
And also dressed more like Arthur with the classic sweater over a collared shirt combo. Also has DW's voice actress as well, or voice actor.
Which I love, because DW's voice actor gets to take the DW voice for a little bit of a walk in a little bit of a different direction, kind of like make it a bit more mature. And it's, oh man, it made me laugh. Of just like, Arthur's future daughter is very well spoken. So just like, he's showing them the picture, and Arthur, who also sounds very like old and defeated, is just like, "After that, everyone called me Broccoli Head."
Yeah, they're actually looking at the photo that was taken on that day in a photo album, and he's explaining why he's got a broccoli and how everyone called him Broccoli Head.
And then his daughter's just like, "Father, do you mean you don't have a Woogle? Everyone at my school has their parents' old Woogle." And my favorite part of this is when he says he doesn't have one, the baby starts crying, and then his daughter just goes, "It can't be true. Oh, the shame." So his kids
and so they go to run away,
immediately pack their bags and move out. And they open the door, and all of Arthur's friends and their corresponding kids are there to point and laugh at him and call him Broccoli Head in a sing-song manner. Ladies and gentlemen,
this got me thinking about I've been getting back into Naruto lately. I only have 100 episodes left of Naruto Shippuden. I'm really on the home stretch now. And the reason I'm doing so is because last year Boruto started, son of Naruto. And it's really interesting to see, like, basically all the characters from Naruto are now adults, and the show's now following their respective children. And I wonder if you could do the same thing with the Arthur universe. You know, the Arthur universe is so lived in, and there's such a colorful cast of characters, and they're all so well established, that if they wanted to keep the show going and keep it fresh, I feel like Arthur Next Generations, and seeing all of Arthur's kids, like this quick shot, like let my imagination ablaze of like, oh, what are all these kids like? Which like characters ended up hooking up, and like what are their kids like? I just found it all really interesting, even though it's just like a dream sequence.
So we've bypassed Arthur Shippuden, and now we're at Barther.
Yeah. Barther.
So yes, we've moved on to to Barther.
Oh my goodness, Barther, Arthur Next Generations.
And we do,
and then we gotta have a movie. We need a movie, Road to Barther. Arthur Road to Barther in between. Oh my god, Will, I never even thought of that, because Boruto is a really stupid name. I think it means something in Japanese. It's like a Japanese pun.
I think
that's why they went with it. I don't think they just went with put a B in front of Naruto, but it's still funny. Like
it is, because like I remember hearing that for the first time, and I was like, it was like Boruto, and I'm like, are you telling me that they just took the N out of Naruto and put in B, and that's all the work they did? But but in Japanese, I think it's supposed to mean like bolt.
Yeah,
like bolt. Bolt.
It would work for you, Will. Like if you were to name your son Bill, that wouldn't be that bad. If I was to name my son Bucus, that would be a crime against humanity.
Well, but you've named yourself that on Twitter before around the Halloween season.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Barther! And like the show, they always love making barf jokes too. So like, oh my god.
Yeah. So this is prime shipping fuel. This scene right here, because we get. I'll just write down what I noticed. It's pretty much all of Arthur's main friends. So I see Brain has a kid. And he has glasses. Brain's kid does. Binky has a hard hat on, so he seems to be in some sort of construction business, and he has a son. Buster has a daughter with blonde hair, and Muffy has twin girls. So very, very interesting. Definitely recommend that you freeze frame some of these.
I also love the detail, they're so good with when they have a dream sequence, the way the camera moves around always gives it, this otherworldly kind of sinister quality. Like, in early episodes, do you remember when Arthur was attacked by the long arm of the law?
Yeah.
And everything was, super big, and the camera was always looking up at the stuff. It gives it this kind of sinister otherworldly quality. In this scene where all of Arthur's now grown-up friends and their children are mocking him for being Broccoli Head, the camera almost has a fisheye quality, and it's kind of circling around like they've all claustrophobically surrounded Arthur and are pointing at him.
And then Arthur, that's essentially the end of the dream, and Arthur he doesn't wake up screaming, but he's just he wakes up. I actually love this. He's like, no, not Broccoli Head, and then he just wakes up and goes, whoa.
Yeah, I love how even Arthur's acknowledging that was very strange for multiple reasons.
That was messed up. So Arthur realizes this is the last straw. He needs to get a Woogle, but then he goes to the store that he was at the other day, and the guy says that they've sold out. In fact, he goes down a whole line of department and toy stores, and they have no Woogle signs and sold out, no more you-know-whats. This reminds me of trying to get a fidget spinner just the other year, of how I had to watch for sales on Facebook pages and immediately go as soon as I saw one, or else I would go by a store and be like, no more fidget spinners.
And then think about how much the times have changed. In 2018, you're drowning in fidget spinners. I could get you a fidget spinner in the next hour if you wanted me to. You know what I mean?
I could get you a fidget spinner by 5:00 this afternoon with nail polish. So Arthur's a little bit down in the dumps, but then he tries to buy one off of Muffy, which is where we get the Woogle price guide thing, which got me to thinking. So Arthur's got $5 on him, and he was prepared to buy one at a store. And an expensive Woogle is around $20 or more. Are Woogles as cheap as $5 in stores?
That's what I was wondering too, because the Muffy, the rare one, was $37, right? So
it was. I think it was 27, but yeah, somewhere around there.
I guess I always assumed they were pretty equivalent to Funko Pops or Bionicles, where they'd be around 15.
Yeah,
but he did only have 5, so I don't know.
Manufacturing costs alone. So Arthur is, again, very desperate at this point, and he refuses to pay that much for the Woogle. And then he goes by this kind of kiosk that he passes by, and he sees an advertisement that says...
It reminds me of a weekend market, like a merchant stand or a flea market salesperson. Just the layout and the guy behind the counter. It doesn't seem like an actual storefront, more so oh, it was flea market Saturday, and then this guy is selling.
He's selling something that ends in oogle, and Arthur immediately throws down his $5 because he thinks it's a Woogle, but it's actually looks to be something homemade called a Poogle. And I liked this.
Arthur, you gotta read the Amazon reviews. What are you doing, bud?
And I like this because we hardly ever, in kids show episodes about fads, you hardly get into the fact of knockoffs because
I know
it's such a cool thing.
It's such an on-the-nose parody of, fads, because you're right. They're all... I don't know if you remember this, Will, but Chinese Beyblades... I've had many Chinese Beyblades in my day that were not official trademark Beyblade brand Beyblades, but they would still work, and they would always break your, Beyblade launcher thingy.
Yeah, exactly. Or, for example, I don't think I've said this... I don't think I've told this on the show. For Christmas, my mother-in-law got me what I thought was an NES Classic, and then I plugged it in and looked at the box, and it turns out I got a Chinese knockoff.
Did it have Venetian blinds and a bunch of weird stuff on it? I'm very curious about this.
It's got 500 games on it. Most of it are dupes, and some of it is the actual games, but it's Rockman 2, Rockman 3, Rockman 4, and Super Mario Dream World or something like that.
Ooh,
so,
that's odd.
It is. It's like I'm really glad that I have it. It's because it's hilarious, but NES Classic also very hard to find. Also make sure that you give the box a good look over before you throw down your money, which is what Arthur didn't do, and he ends up buying a Poogle. And what it is, it's like it's kind of vaguely shaped like a Woogle, but it's also like made out of some kind of hard substance, and it's got like these weird little like arms and legs attached to it.
And they kind of just hang down. So like the Poogle is rock hard. It does not squish or jiggle like a Woogle. It does not speak, and its expression is unchanging. And there's only one, it seems, this kind of puke green. And they're also kind of in a Mr. Potato Head shape.
It's really pathetic looking. Like it just looks like a fat, distended Woogle corpse.
So there's this moment where Arthur's trying to pass off that his Poogle is a Woogle named Charles, and Muffy's sort of displaying all the things a Woogle could do that a Poogle can't. And the part that made me laugh out loud was when she squishes the Woogle, and it's like, I love you! And Arthur tries to do it with the Poogle, and it just kind of lets out like a...
Yeah, like a...
It's funny now. Like, that's so funny.
Yeah. So, and then Buster comes up and is like, Arthur, you bought one of those Poogles? Because Arthur is still trying to pass off that it's a Woogle. And then Arthur...
And here is where we get the thumbnail for the episode, where Muffy and, Francine immediately get as close to the camera as possible. And they're like, you bought a Poogle? What is that? Like they're disgusted.
Yeah, like, ew. And then Arthur goes... I knew it was a Poogle all along. I meant to buy a Poogle. And then he pawns it off on like these triplets in like a 3-person baby carriage, and then they just pass them off to each other, and one of them starts crying. So that was a funny little interlude. Arthur is talking with Grandma Thora the next day, just telling her about this whole fad business. And of course, Grandma's seen it all. She's seen all of the dumb fads that have come through in the last 30, 40 years. And she knows that it'll end. It'll be all over soon. And then they'll move on to something else. I did like Arthur's rebuttal here because as much as Grandma Thora is right, it doesn't feel like it'll go away. Arthur says, but it's not soon now. It's now, and everyone cares a lot. And then Grandma thinks of something that she still has that Arthur's father used to have, and that was very popular, and it was very popular in real life as well. And
I was just going to say, this was a real thing. I remember my parents telling me about this.
It's a pet rock, which it comes in its own little cage, and you just pretend that it's a pet. I looked this up a little bit. Pet rocks were popular in the second half of 1975, and the popularity reached a peak at Christmas 1975. And then right after, once we got to 1976, once that calendar turned, then it was all over for pet rocks. Ask your parents or your grandparents about pet rocks, kids. Arthur brings it out with him the next day and sees like Francine, Muffy, and Binky and kind of has to decide who to show it to. And he decides Francine and Muffy because he thinks that he'll get less guff from them. And he's like, it's not a Woogle, it's a pet rock. And they're like, what does it do? And Arthur, thinking on the fly, just says...
Oh my gosh. This moment's almost like uncharacteristic for this show. It's just such an odd joke. Like, the fact that like Arthur's backed into a corner and it's like take it away, Will, he goes.
It rocks. And then starts to shake it.
And then Muffy and like Francine basically roll their eyes so far into the back of their head that like they can't see.
Yeah. And then it turns out that it would have been better if he had kept going and seen Binky, because then Binky comes by and he says, "Hey Arthur, cool rock." So the pet rock idea didn't really work out either. He meets Buster the next day, who I must say I'm a little concerned. Like these,
I was just gonna say,
Woogle things are fun and everything. Sorry, Lucas, go ahead.
No. Yeah, I was just gonna say, but I was getting a little worried about Buster at this point because he seems to be losing grip of reality.
I'm very concerned. Buster is openly talking to his Woogle, whose name is Bilbo, and he's like, and then we're going to go to Muffy's after school. And it's like, Bilbo says, "Hi, Arthur." I'm like, okay, like, take it down a notch, just a toy. And then we get this kind of weird scene that I feel like almost should have come in like a different part of the episode. I'm not sure because like Arthur says, it's been a while since you and I have actually done anything. It's just been woogle, woogle, woogle day and night. It's like, I bet you couldn't give that thing up if you tried. And then Buster's like, yes, I can. I could throw it away and not think for a second. And then Arthur's like, are you sure? And then Buster trashes it. And then we kind of see that it was Arthur's diabolical plan to get his hands on Buster's Woogle as they like struggle for it in the trash. So, and then eventually, like, Arthur is just revealing that he's getting even more desperate to get a Woogle. And he says, I've never even held one. And Buster finally lets him hold his Woogle for 2 seconds. And we get this great shot of, like, Arthur getting to hold Buster's Woogle. And then, like, the world slows down. We get this, like, slow spin as Arthur is, like, in complete ecstasy. Like, he finally gets the thing that he's been looking for. And then Buster snatches it away. So, and then that scene kind of just ends and everything's okay. Like, it's a little strange.
Well, I don't know about okay. It seems that Buster might be a little bit addicted to Woogles. Yeah. He's letting everything else in his life go the wayside.
Yeah, I guess okay is a relative term. Again, the next scene is also something that I thought maybe we'd get a little bit earlier, where Arthur comes up to Binky in the lunchroom, and he says, I'm glad that I'm not the only one who doesn't have a Woogle. And Binky says, yeah, those things are so dorky, you couldn't pay me to have one. And then all of a sudden, Muffy comes in the shot. She has a double of another Woogle that she already has, and then just gives it to Binky. And I'm thinking, like, why didn't she give it to Arthur?
Oh, yeah.
Why isn't she gifted one to Arthur as well? Like,
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. And then Binky immediately loves it because it's a Woogle that burps, which I thought was keeping in character with Binky. And then finally, the ending of the episode is Arthur playing by himself because, again, he doesn't have a Woogle, so he feels kind of left out, like, so he can't play with anybody else. And Francine sees him playing by himself and offers him one of her Woogles again. But he has to admit that he's always liked Woogles and was wrong to ever dislike them, or something to that effect.
This is funny. It's like funny that Francine would do this.
I mean, it is kind of keeping in character, but it is pretty mean. Arthur is
it's almost like it's got like a There Will Be Blood stint to it of like, God is a superstition, Eli. Like, it's not quite that malicious, but
that's a good Daniel Plainview. I liked that.
I have a friend and we just talk like Daniel Plainview to each other constantly. That's one of my go-to impressions.
One night I will come to you and I will take your Woogle, and just as simple as that. It's been a while since I've seen that movie.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I say I'm a Woogle man, I think you believe me.
Sorry, that really caught me off guard. I'm sure I peaked my audio with that one. If I say I'm a Woogle man. Oh, God, that's good. Keep that one.
There will be Woogles.
There will be Woogles. Let's say that you have a Woogle. and I have a straw. Anyway. So Arthur almost gives in a couple of times to this. And then, but still, he almost says what Francine wants him to say, but then immediately just goes, no, I still think they're dweeby. Anything's more fun than a Woogle. In fact, and he takes the lid off of his glass juice cap and says, I bet even this is more fun than a Woogle. And he starts to click it like you can do with most of those. And then this I kind of felt was a little bit of an on-the-nose ending to this whole thing. Of I was one fad
just going to say... I was just going to say, we were on the exact same page here. This is kind of where the episode lost me.
A little bit, because like finally you see that the episode is a commentary on like how quickly fads go, how intense they are, and then how they end, and they all go on to something else. And then Arthur starts clicking the juice cap, and then everybody, like every single person in the playground, like looks up and sees what he's doing, and like he's still clicking the juice cap, and then everybody walks over. Is like, "Whoa, where'd you get that? I want one!" And then they're like throwing their Woogles on the ground. I'm just like, okay, I know it's a cartoon, but like we had some really good points about like fad culture and everything like that, and then this is kind of like a little bit too far into the realm of silly, I guess.
It's just so lame. Like,
Yeah.
the juice cap is just so lame. Think about all the things the Woogle could do. It chibbies, it shakes, it talks. The juice cap, it clicks, and I hate it. I don't like the noise. I think about how, like, sticky a used juice cap would be from a glass bottle. I'm just not a fan. I see what they were going for. Like you said, it's very obviously like a commentary on how, like, don't worry about fads too much because they go away and everybody always moves on to the next thing. I just wish they picked something a little bit more interesting to be the next thing. Maybe like some sort of trading card game or something like that. But I think what they wanted to do was make it so it was something that Arthur started, and also something that was not like a corporatized, like, manufactured product, more sort of a found fad.
Yeah, and I think the message was like, kids, if you're left out of a fad, like, don't worry, it'll pass on to something else. And then, like, I think the idea was that, like, a fad can be anything silly. It's like even juice caps can be a fad, and that's how kind of inherently dumb they are. I will say I do like clicking juice caps, so I can't follow you there. In fact, it's a little bit like almost like having a fidget spinner. It's like a thing to just do with your thumb. But I'll be careful not to click a juice cap in your company.
Yeah, I'll admit I'm the weird one when it comes to that. It's just a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, fair enough. It might just be the sound of it. And then the end of the episode is Arthur finally getting a Woogle from Grandma for like a good report card. And then he's like, "Gee, Grandma, thanks." But now we're on to juice caps, and I just
This was like crazy. I was like, "Wow, you ungrateful!" Like, he can think that, but to immediately say it out loud as his grandma gives him a present, I was just aghast with like the rudeness of it all.
And then we see at the end everybody's playing with juice caps, and then there's a sale on Woogles at the toy store. All right, and now a word from us kids.
And now a word from us kids.
Did you see this one?
Yeah, I did. I was really surprised by how much I enjoyed this word from us kids. So basically, they have all these arts and crafts materials, and the kids are basically instructed to make their own set of, like, toys. And it's really interesting. The kids are super creative. I'm not sure how much direction they got with this stuff, but some of them are able to make some pretty functional toys out of, like, typical construction materials, like bouncy balls and pipe cleaners and stuff you would have in a small elementary school classroom. Some kids, like, they make a series of, like, bugs that are collectible and different and all have different names. Some kids make animals, like one can spin, one can jump. There's one set of kids that I was like, okay, guys, like, maybe you have to use your imagination a little too much to have fun with these. Those were the kids that made the plate space station.
Oh, you mean?
Like,
do you mean the kids who made the XL Thruster 98 and the Interstar?
Or paper plates? Yes, yeah. I do mean those kids. Like, it's like, you guys have great imaginations, power to you, but I do not think anyone else would enjoy playing with these plates as much as you two.
Maybe not.
Another little note about this one, besides how surprised I was by how creative the kids were and how, like, crafty they were, like those two girls that made the apartment building for their bugs. I'll also say that it's funny how fashion comes back in style. Like, the kid rocking the Champion t-shirt. You could buy that t-shirt now at, like, Urban Outfitters for, like, $40.
Wow.
And it's just funny how, like, yeah, like, that retro, like, 90s t-shirt swag has come back into style. And that kid's killing it with a Champion t-shirt.
Yeah, I do want to give a quick shout out to a couple of the things that I really liked here. I did think overall these were pretty creative. The kids who made the elastic ball I thought was cool because it actually bounces.
To this day, I still do not know how to make an elastic ball.
Me neither.
I've always been confused. Like, do you just use elastics, or do you start with, like, a much, much smaller ball and start the wrapping the elastics around that? That's always been my misconception about elastic balls.
Yeah, I don't know either. The tennis ball animals I thought were really cool, as you kind of mentioned before. And the one at the end, the game where you knock down the cans with the paper plates, I thought that was a cool idea.
Another note before you continue about the tennis ball animals, there's a great moment where they're talking to each other, and one kid does this great voice where he's like, "Your head is nothing but hollow," to, like, mess with the other kid, I guess, with the tennis ball.
Yeah, the kid's really trying out his B material on that one.
And now, back to Arthur.
All right, so now we go on to our second story here. It's Dad's dessert dilemma. And in fact, Dad is the one who starts off the cold open. He's making something in his kitchen, and he kind of looks at the camera and is like, oh, you must be looking for Arthur. I think he's doing his homework. And then we get this awesome cutaway where Arthur has a plate of cookies and then eventually like just upturns them into his mouth. It's just this great running gag how like when anybody else has control of the show, Arthur's like this notorious chow hound. I love it.
I also like Arthur's dad pulling the classic, oh, I didn't see you there.
Yeah. He's trying to make something called cinnamon toast souffle, which compared to all the other stuff that he's making in this episode of his own accord, I'd try cinnamon toast souffle.
No, it does sound pretty good, but the problems you'd run into are very realistic in that cinnamon toast souffle is fine except getting it out of the toaster because, of course, souffle is extra sensitive, and so you don't want it to deflate, and to get it out of the toaster, he's using these tongs, and it sort of punctures and deflates the souffle.
We kind of get shots, like the whole thing is Dad saying, like, I'm used to setbacks in my cooking. I'm also used to my cooking being misunderstood. So we get a couple of, like, stuff that he's made that is, like, meant to be obviously disgusting. Like, chunky pudding balls, which might be okay. I just want to know what the chunks are in them.
Probably, like, chocolate. I assume it's, like, the British pudding, where it's, like, a pastry rather than, like, classic, like, school lunch pudding. Do you know what I'm talking about? How British pudding is like a cake? I
think so. Yeah, I just wonder what kind of the chunks are made out of. That's kind of the make or break of that one. And he also offers them cranberry prune crumble, which no thank you. No thank you.
I'd try it. It's not that bad. It looks like a rum cake or something.
Right. So the whole thing is like
DW does have a great line with the prune crumble where she goes, "Sorry, I don't like broken food."
No, Arthur says that.
Oh, Arthur says that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then DW's like, shouldn't you be encouraging us to eat more healthy foods? Yeah, so the whole point of the cold open is that Arthur and DW don't really like Dad's cooking or his baking, I guess. Either one. The episode begins with everybody in Mr. Ratburn's class, and they're talking about Galileo and how it's going to be his birthday. And so they're going to be having like a quiz or something. The next day, and then everybody goes right into their argument about why they should have a birthday party for Galileo, which is
I love moments like this where like the class turns on the teacher in unison, like sort of an I am Spartacus, like, no, we must do something fun in class for once, which is started by Binky. He's got a great line where he goes, if it's his birthday, we should have a birthday party. That would help us learn better.
Yeah, there's a couple of good arguments here. Like eventually, like Buster says, and a party needs ice cream and cake, and we get the inklings of what we're about to see in the rest of the episode when Mr. Ratburn holds his chin and just goes, "Cake." And we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. Great line here from Arthur: to celebrate someone's birthday and not have cake seems disrespectful. And so they do decide to have a party, and everybody offers to make things. Arthur volunteers his mom to make chocolate chip cookies. He goes home and tells her this, which, again, we get a little bit of a peek at what the rest of the episode is going to be like. Arthur's mom very busy with work, so she can't make them for him. And his dad offers to make something. And Arthur's like, you're not going to make anything weird, are you? And Arthur's dad's like, weird? When have I made anything weird? And then he goes to check his turnip muffins. Ugh. So eventually he does make something. It's a honey cake in the shape of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Dude, this cake looks amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where, like, it's just weird narratively that Arthur would be so upset about this because it looks totally fine. And it's very much like a Cake Boss cake where it's in the shape of something extravagant. If this was an episode of Cake Boss, this would be the moment where they'd be like, oh no, it's too big to get on the truck, commercial break.
Right. Yeah, Arthur's complaints don't really make sense. He complains about getting cake when he originally wanted cookies, and he thinks his dad made him a whole Leaning Tower of pizza. So, like, all right, this is completely over your head, Arthur. Side note...
Which would also be good, by the way. A bunch of deep dish pizzas stacked on top of each other. Side meat.
Dude, totally. Side note, I really want cake after watching this episode. Arthur has a daydream about how this will not go over well, and it's like everybody looking at the cake in his class and going, what is it? And great line here from Brain. It seems to be glorifying poor architecture. And then finally, Ratburn in his head just goes, I give this cake and its owner a D. D for disgusting. Great delivery on that one. So Arthur puts something, like puts the cover back on the cake and then like hides a book by it and just puts it at the very back so that nobody will see it. As everybody's enjoying the sweets, like Brain's mom brought ice cream and all that kind of stuff, Buster dips a cookie into his ice cream, which I think is a pro-level strat.
Oh, yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
But eventually, Mr. Ratburn does find the cake and has some, and yeah, he loves it. Of course, it's honey cake. It's probably really good. And like he encourages everybody to try some, and Arthur's eventually like fesses. He doesn't fess up, but he's like volunteers are just like who brought this cake? And like I did. My dad made it. Miss Sweetwater comes into the classroom, has a slice of Arthur's dad's cake, and then says, "I would love to have this cake at the end of our sing-along the next day." And then Arthur says, "My dad can make it, no problem." So here's where we start to get the problem of Arthur volunteering his dad to make cakes that he probably shouldn't be volunteering him for. He tells this to his dad at the end of the day. He's like, "Miss Sweetwater liked it so much, I said you'd make a cake for her." And Dad's like, "That's wonderful." What?
Yeah, it's the line delivery and timing on the what is perfect.
But we see that his dad wants to make him cakes because finally he's made something that Arthur really enjoys and that everybody else seems to enjoy too. So it's a little bit appealing to his pride as a baker. And
DW also wants a cake at this moment too. She's feeling jealous Arthur's getting all these cakes,
which he offers to make her. The next day, we see a chocolate cake in Miss Sweetwater's class, and everybody like waves over to Arthur and thanks him. So he's starting to let it go a little bit to his head. In fact, Mr. Ratburn leaves the class for a second, and then he looks over, and we see the kids are like their mouths are like caked in chocolate. There's chocolate on their hands. So not only are the kids in Miss Sweetwater's class complete idiots, but they don't know how to use napkins, my dude. These kids suck.
I also love how they all turn around and they're like, "Thanks, Arthur!" Like they're like mindless. Like
yeah. It's
but now we get introduced to probably my favorite running gag in this entire episode.
Oh, dude,
and that
yes.
is Mr. Ratburn and the spring reading list, aka "Are you having cake?"
Yeah, that's the thing. Is that Mr. Ratburn sees the cake and he leaves the class, and then like busts in and is just like, "Oh, are you having cake?" And it's never not funny. In fact, like he goes up and has a slice of cake, and then he takes the rest of the cake for himself.
Like but also the fact that he always tries to cover up this, like, he's always trying to present them with the spring reading list as well. Like, "Oh, Mrs. Sweetwater, I thought you should just have a copy of the spring reading list. Oh, are you having cake?"
Yeah. And he bumps a kid out of the way to get the rest of the cake. It's so great. I love it. Vibing hard with Mr. Ratburn in this episode of just like, yeah, give me all the cake. We come back and Arthur is asking his dad if he can make cakes for their upcoming band recital, which he's starting to ask a little too much, but still appealing to his dad's sense of pride because everybody loves the cake. His dad's making something that I really wish I knew what it was. It looks like a log cabin that's made out of like pepperoni logs and has like a celery roof.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is as well.
It looks pretty good.
But Arthur says, when he's trying to argue for why they need cake for the band recital, he says, "Performing is hard. We need the kind of energy that you can only get from sugar."
Yes.
And then he talks about how one cake's good enough for the performers, and then 2 more for the audience, which Arthur's dad responds with, "Audience?"
Yeah. It's a great couple of lines there from Arthur. And you could have that we need the kind of energy you can only get from sugar. Like that's straight out of like a cereal commercial or something. We also get a shot of Dad's bulletin board of all of the orders that he has to do. So I see that I wrote this down. He's making a bunch of cakes, cherry pies, raspberry jelly rolls, and he's also making 12 mousses for Betty. I don't know who Betty is or why she needs 12 mousses, but
Is that the Crosswires? Betty Crosswire?
is that her name?
Let's do a little ancillary Google search.
I don't know.
For Betty Arthur character, because it sounds so familiar. I mean, the Crosswires would be the type of people to want moose. Let's see. Betty Arthur. Apologize if this is getting picked up on my mic, my keyboard typing. Here we go. Betty Arthur character. Let's do this. Betty Arthur. No, that is a Wikipedia page for Golden Girls. Okay, just a second.
I think that's B. Arthur.
Yeah, Arthur, IMDb. And then we're gonna go to cast. And then I'm gonna do Control F.
I figured it was just somebody who I just figured it was like nobody.
Betty Baxter? Wait.
No, that's Bitsy.
No, it's Bitsy. Dang.
All right, well, whatever. 12 mousses for Betty, whoever she may be. So mom says, he's getting a bit carried away, and Dad's like, yeah, but I could before recently I would never be able to get him to taste my chocolate dipped ham. But we see that Arthur's dad is spreading himself a bit too thin because as he's making food that night, he's supposed to be making raspberry jelly rolls and beef stroganoff, but accidentally mixes up the ingredients for the two, and he makes beef roll and raspberry stroganoff. So he has to
raspberry stroganoff. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I don't know, you would have had to really, really not have been paying attention to make a beef roll. But all the same.
A beef roll, though, listen, I love a sausage roll. Sure. Oh, my God. I'll kill a sausage roll. So a beef roll probably isn't that bad either.
But indeed, it wasn't what they asked for, so.
No.
So Arthur brings the cake to the recital, and Francine, very on the nose, says, "Your cakes have made you the most popular kid in school." And really, as I would not expect any less from with Arthur, the slightest hint of popularity has made him just awful.
Oh my God, he's a monster.
Yeah.
And I love it. This whole sequence is hilarious because Arthur's gone full, I'm the kingpin of the school. He's walking down the hallways and it's being like, how you doing? Good to see ya. He's putting this total put on, he's the king of it. It's amazing. Just because he made a couple cakes that people liked, he now thinks he rules the school.
Yeah, just doing all this back-clapping nonsense, essentially. And then, going up to, he goes to the front and is just like, you got a birthday coming up. Cake? No problem. No problem. And, putting on, this oily, slick Arthur voice. And then, the next time your mom does a bake sale, tell her to give me a call. Kind of thing. Oh, he gets so awful with just the slightest hint of popularity. It's great. I actually think this is really in keeping with Arthur's character. He leaves school one day and sees that Braden's mom has brought some run-off ice cream that she wasn't able to get rid of. So she gives some ice cream cones to the kids. And then, I love this, Arthur gets afraid that Big Ice Cream is angling for his dessert turf, as he calls it.
There's a amazing line for Buster where he's talking about how, first off, Binky says ice cream is the best dessert of all desserts. And then Buster's talking about how if she ever has extra ice cream again, whether it's 1 tablespoon, 1 teaspoon, 1 molecule, he'll be happy to have it.
Gets a little carried away. So Arthur is rushing back home. He needs his dad to make desserts immediately or else he'll lose his dessert turf. And then Mom kind of stops him and reminds him that, he can't keep asking his dad to do all this. Even though he says that he loves it, it's giving him a lot more work than he needs. And of course, this is his job. So he needs to be careful with this. He says, I'll wait a while before I ask him to make more desserts. Yo,
this is
not
great.
the lesson. That's not the lesson. Maybe don't ask for desserts anymore. And of course, he totally twists it to his own ends. I believe he's working on homework in the kitchen or something. And it's I've waited 45 minutes. That's enough time.
Yeah, he's like watching the clock.
This was a mystery for me for a long time. So on his paper, he's got like 2 cakes, 3 pies, and a sachetorte.
It's a 4 cakes, 6 pies, and a sachetorte.
Oh,
so even more items.
Yeah. So a sachetorte, as Arthur pronounces it, I'm not sure if that's right based on how it's spelled, but what it is, like, I always wondered what this is when I was a kid. So what it is, I looked it up on Wikipedia, of course. It's quote, the most famous chocolate cake in the world. It's a chocolate cake with a thin layer of apricot jam and a dark chocolate coating.
How do you spell it? I want to...
Sacherer.
Sacherer.
Torte. And that's all one word. I believe it's
I hadn't heard of it either. I believe
it's German.
Oh, okay. It's like a very fancy chocolate cake.
Yeah, essentially, absolutely. But it seems like a lot of work. It's like a real specialty cake.
Yeah, well, that in addition to, again, 4 cakes and 6 pies. And this is basically for free as well. Like, this is not bringing in any income for his dad's catering business. It's just it's nuts, the demands.
Yeah, absolutely. Arthur is going to the garage to ask his dad, but then he sees that Mr. Crosswire is there and overhears their conversation where essentially Dad is really behind in his catering schedule because of all the stuff that Arthur had him do, and Dad might lose Mr. Crosswire's business if he doesn't make food in time for Mr. Crosswire's event that he's catering. DW comes up to him and asks him what's wrong, and he kind of tells her what he saw, and DW immediately starts panicking of like, we'll end up on the street. We'll have no money. And Arthur's like, no, we're not going to lose Dad's business. Dad's going to lose Mr. Crosswire's business. And DW corrects and says, we'll have almost no money. We'll have to put our furniture on the street.
I love, like, when... I think this isn't the first time DW's been, like, beside herself about the idea of being destitute. But it's always, like, hilarious. She then, like, goes on to, like, try and grab... Arthur's 4 cakes, 6 pies list, and she says, "Throw it away! Your crazy demands will destroy us." Yeah,
and they start struggling over Arthur's paper with the order on it that he wanted to bring his dad, and then his dad comes out, and Arthur, DW hugs her dad and says, "Arthur did it. Make him live on the street first." And then Arthur admits that he was wrong in what he did, and he saw how it affected his dad, so he rips up the paper. And he asks if there's any way that he can help him. And so Arthur and DW offer to help Dad to finally do his big order of food. And they do a little bit of a cooking montage, which is kind of fun, of them just preparing stuff. Although I find it dubious that they could make it go faster, Arthur and DW being there, but let's just say that they did. Also, there's a shot of Pal bringing a bowl of what looks to be condiments or something, or ingredients, in a wagon that he's tied to, like a good boy, because Pal's the best boy. And yeah, they managed to make all of the food, and it's actually a pretty good lesson of Arthur being like, wow, I had no idea cooking was so much work. And it's true. Cooking is a lot of work. Especially cooking at this level. And then...
Well, especially baking.
Yes, absolutely. And then Dad reveals that thanks to your guys' help, I made a second cake for us. And I'm just thinking, like, Arthur's had a lot of cake this week. Maybe we want to cut back on the cake. And like clockwork, who comes in with the spring reading list but Mr. Ratburn?
Oh my gosh.
Go on.
It's funny when it's like the band assembly and another person's class, but the idea that he would home deliver the spring reading list and then be like, "Oh, are you having cake?" It's just such a great gag.
# are you having cake? Yeah, and the episode ends with, Arthur's dad was able to get all of the food done. Mr. Crosswire picks it up, drives away. And in fact, Mr. Ratburn starts tailing Mr. Crosswire's car because he can smell the cake coming from it, like in a literal cartoon aroma. And he just goes, brownie cake, and keeps following it. So this made me think of, did you ever see the movie Nightcrawler?
Yes, I did.
So Mr. Ratburn, he just follows cakes around wherever they are. He's a cakecrawler.
He's the Cakecrawler. And then he attacks with the summer reading list.
And I mean, oh man, I want to see the Nightcrawler trailer with Mr. Ratburn's face over Jake Gyllenhaal's.
I feel like Jake Gyllenhaal would be some pretty inspired casting for Mr. Ratburn. I think he could play a solid Mr. Ratburn.
It'd be a departure for old Jake, that's for sure. Or the end of this episode with like the final song from Nightcrawler, like the one over the credits of like Mr. Ratburn driving with the cake and just down now. Anyway, that really made me laugh. That whole thing did. That whole bit was great. All right, let's rewind it back a little bit to Arthur Rides the Bandwagon. What'd you think of that one, Lucas?
It's interesting because looking at the titles of these episodes, the one I expected to get a lot more out of was Arthur Rides the Bandwagon. And of course, we've talked about this before, anything that plays on our childish 90s nostalgia. We were both kids who were sort of into our own fads that would be appropriate for our age groups. And so I did like how on the nose and realistic their portrayal of a kid's fad was, like to the point where there was knockoffs, to the point where the fake fad they created actually probably be a pretty successful real life fad. But I do think that this episode kind of loses steam 3/4 of the way through, and it doesn't really earn its conclusion. It just seems kind of hokey that Arthur's little bottle cap trick sort of turns everybody off the Woogles instantly. I know that that's the point they're looking for, but I think I would have really enjoyed this episode as opposed to just thinking this episode was pretty good had they stuck the ending a little bit more. That being said, love the best sequence, of course, is Arthur's nightmare about being called Broccoli Head and all the adult versions of the Arthur characters. That was really inspired. And I also kind of like Buster's weird descent into like total addiction to the Woogle. That's kind of a fun little detail as well. But overall, I just thought it was kind of okay.
Okay. I feel like I have the same feelings about both of these episodes, so I'll just start with this one. I really mostly liked the commentary on kind of kids' fads, and I thought that it was for the most part pretty well done. For I'd say 3/4 of the episode, I thought that was really interesting, and it was I think it was fun to talk about too, just with the two of us here, kind of reminiscing about fads and like how it's still kind of applicable today. Like this episode still totally applies, and I imagine it is a good message to send to kids who feel left out of a fad, which probably happened for me once or twice, and maybe for kids.
Elwood City Limits listeners, send me Nendoroids, P.O. Box, whatever have you. Figure it out and send them my way, baby. Woo!
Yeah, maybe we'll have to set up a P.O. Box for the show or something, and I'll ship off the Nendoroids to you. Yeah, you're right. I think the ending was just kind of the thing that left a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth, just because it didn't seem to match kind of what else had happened in the episode. It seemed a little bit too convenient and didn't seem in keeping with the spirit of what they were trying to do. That said, I still found it pretty entertaining, and I liked it pretty well. It's just there's a couple things that I would probably change to just improve it a little bit. Dad's dessert dilemma, it's funny, in talking about it, I found that there maybe wasn't as much to this episode as I thought there was when I was watching it, but it's another case of, like, the parts of the episode I thought were actually kind of fun. Like I said, and like we both said, the running gag of hashtag are you having cake was great, and I never got tired of it. I just love that Mr. Ratburn is addicted to that specifically. And I liked Arthur getting a big head. That's always funny too. I feel like it's happened.
Always funny.
I feel like it's happened a couple of other times, but it's just so routinely how Arthur sets himself up for his own demise.
It's because it's like his character is always so anxious and so worried about what other people think of him. So that contrasted with whenever he gets a little bit of popularity or a little bit of fame, how it instantly turns him into a monster.
Yeah, is
always just like it's a great gimmick.
Yeah, like the moment Arthur is able to relax is when he's at his worst, kind of. And the structure of the episode I felt wasn't really super strong. Like, I don't know. It's kind of hard to communicate, but like the whole story, the meat and potatoes of it was not exactly what kept me coming back. I just kind of liked the little interactions of, Arthur being cool, or to be honest with you, seeing the types of different desserts. I thought that this was in terms of the visuals of all of the desserts and even the weird ones that Dad was making. I found those actually really interesting to look at and think about, and it made me hungry. I actually realized I haven't eaten anything today, so I better get on that relatively soon. But yeah, it was it's okay. I'd say I like it a little bit less than Arthur Rides the Bandwagon, but it's totally fine.
Interesting. I really liked Dad's Dessert Dilemma, and it's not just because I like alliteration. It's because, my favorite Arthur episodes are the ones that I find the moral is really well executed and it resonates, but they also have, it's not purely serious. They always have those funny, out there Arthur jokes sprinkled throughout that I really get a lot from. And I find this episode really delivers on both those aspects. In one sense, I really enjoy the characterization of Arthur's dad in this episode. The fact that he's sort of working himself to the bone and really overworking himself, but he's willing to do it because he's happy, even though Arthur's taking advantage of him, he's happy that Arthur's finally taking an interest in his work, and he feels popular and wanted, and so he wants to do all this baking for Arthur. I thought that was really realistic in the way that, Arthur and DW have always sort of scoffed at their dad's baking, and now that Arthur's dad feels wanted, he wants to fulfill all these things for Arthur, even though Arthur's being totally unreasonable. And then I love the other aspect of, again, Arthur letting it all go to his head and sort of not thinking about his dad's feelings or the repercussions whatsoever, demanding 4 cakes and 6 pies after waiting an hour. I thought that was also realistic because a kid wouldn't understand that, hey, this is your dad's job and it's actually a lot to make all of this stuff. It's not easy for him. And then, of course, there's that extra added element, all the little funny lines in this episode I got a lot out of. There's the "Are you having cake" saga. There's Buster going bonkers over this ice cream, saying he'll enjoy one solitary molecule. Lots of little moments like that I actually really enjoyed this episode. It's not a favorite or anything, but I think I was really surprised by it just because I wasn't expecting much from it.
Well, there you have it. Hey, listener. Are you having cake? Hey, you got any extra cake lying around? Do you want to throw a little bit our way? Come on, man. After talking about cake, I'm real hungry. If you have anything to say about this Arthur episode or any episode of Elwood City Limits or Arthur, let us know about it at the following channels. First off, got to mention Facebook.com/Elwood City Limits. We just reached 100 likes as of last week. So thank you, everybody, for your continued support. Really appreciate hitting that milestone. On Twitter, we are at ECL Podcast. Tumblr, elwoodcitylimits.tumblr.com, as you heard in the cold open there. And, of course, you can email us. We've gotten some great emails recently, and we'd love to have more. Always, always, always. elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. If you'd like to know where else you can listen to us, depending on where you're finding us now, our full episode archive is on elwoodcitylimits.libsyn.com, Libsyn. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts and on the Google Play Store. Is there anywhere else that you'd like us to be? Well, then make sure you tell us by getting in contact with one of the ways that I just told you. All right, so Lucas, the next time we are continuing on through Season 3, and this next one I do have pretty strong memories of, and I'm wondering if you do too. We're going to be talking about popular girls and Buster's growing grudge.
Ooh, I love a good revenge tale.
That's right, and it's all about that. Popularity, girls, I'm to assume, and much, much more when we convene for the next Elwood City Limits. This is Will Young. Thanks a lot for joining us once again. And Lucas Mancini.
Throw it away! Your crazy demands will destroy us!
We'll see you next time, kids. Have a great week.